It's Anna here, and just before we get started with this episode, I am a trustee of RET, the Royal Highland Education Trust, and they are having another one of their amazing gala dinners at Ingliston. I really just wanted to make you aware. Hopefully you might be keen to take a table, buy a ticket, sponsor, donate a raffle prize, or get involved in whatever way you can. So for tickets, go to www.ret.org. If you think that you can contribute in another way, again, go to the RET website and click on the Contact Us page to get in touch. Or if it's easier, you can get in touch with me through the OnFARM connections and I will pass on the information. So that is on Twitter and Instagram at @on_farm UK. So we'd love to hear from you, however you might be able to contribute. But RET is a wonderful charity teaching children all about food farming in the countryside. So it's something that is certainly dear to my heart, and I'm sure to many of our listeners as well. Hello and welcome to the OnFARM podcast. It's Anna here with you this week. I'm going to let the boys introduce themselves, but I have been speaking to two of the three hosts of the Farming Funny podcast. And as the name suggests, it was a very amusing chat and really great to talk to them. You can listen to their podcast in all the usual places, much like you would listen to OnFARM. But it's great, in the podcasting world, we like to support each other and just get more people listening to podcasts. So it's been really nice to have them as guests. So grab a cup of tea, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Before you do that, though, just a quick acknowledgement, but a very sincere one to our sponsors for this week, Bell Ingram, Rural Property Specialists. We could not do this podcast without our generous sponsors. So thank you very much to them.
Okay, my name is Nick. I am the co-host of Farming Funny. I am a farmer, a father, and I'm exhausted 99% of the time.
Brilliant.
Oh, tough one. Hello, my name is James. I am also co-host of the Farming Funny podcast along with Nicholas. I am a farmer and not potentially, a way to be a father.
I'm sure we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Excellent. How long have you got left?
Oh, God, the countdown's on until it's game over. I think end of January.
Oh, right.
To be honest with you, I'm not really changing the way, I'm not thinking about it in the slightest because it's going to come, so I don't want to, I'm still living the life of Riley at the moment, and when it comes, it comes.
There's a third member of the Farming Funny podcast. So I wonder if before we kick off, one of you could just tell me a little bit about him so that he doesn't feel left out.
That's right. So the third member of our band is Sandy Kirkpatrick. He is actually in charge of children tonight and his wife is out, so he couldn't join us. But yeah, he's got his own kind of socials with Farm Stock Official. So he does a lot of kind of stuff on that for agriculture in Scotland and England. He actually came on one of our podcasts as a guest. And it went so well that we were kind of like, let's get this guy on as a permanent fixture. So that's how Sandy came into it.
Oh, amazing. So you guys have known each other for longer than that, presumably then. How did you two become friends or colleagues or both? How did it all kick off?
So Nick and I actually met through a mutual friend in Aberdeen during university and college days. So our friendship evolved around beers and whatnot, a lot of debauchery. So we kind of we started our friendship that way, and then when a good friend of mine went travelling, Nick was over in New Zealand at the same time working on a farm over there.
Okay.
So we then caught up with him a couple more nights of debauchery, and then we kind of just really drifted apart. Nick went on and lived a different life down in London, and then he was away from farming, and then I think just end of COVID, just came back, or during COVID, came back to farm, and he phoned me up one night and came up with this idea about a sort of light humoured podcast on agriculture, and he caught me with my guard down, and here I am.
You are friends, and I guess that helps because unlike Monty, who's the co-host of the OnFARM podcast, we kind of either I host an episode or he hosts an episode. It's quite rare that we will kind of be together on any one episode. Now we're colleagues and friends, but actually it's less important for us to have banter. But you guys have got to have that banter because there's 3 of you on most of the episodes. So how does that banter go, and how do you kind of find your way between having the fun but also choosing the content that you want to have? Because it's funny as the name suggests, but you do have some serious content in there. So how do you kind of find that balance between banter and something that's serious?
It's a funny one. So when we started, as any podcaster will probably tell you, it didn't come natural to us at all. If you listen to the first kind of 3 or 4 episodes, it is quite stagnant. It feels a little bit kind of forced. But I mean, me and James always did have that relationship. We'd always had a laugh together anyway, whenever in any endeavour we'd kind of had in the past. And what we found is, as we kind of went on, I would send James a message before the podcast saying, right, tonight we're going to talk about this. In my head, I'd have a few questions that I can put to James and whoever, because we had a lot of guests on before Sandy joined us, and we usually have a guest every week. So I'd have lots of questions and things like that. But what ended up happening was we just got completely sidetracked and talked about, all these different things, which actually is great. If you stick and it's quite stagnant and, you ask questions, it's more like an interview, it can be quite hard listening, where we find once we get onto something, and like James will say the same, some of the things that we've talked about, we'd never have thought we were going to talk about on a podcast whatsoever. So it just ended up coming quite naturally, I suppose, to us. Would you say, James?
Yeah, I kind of relate us to sort of the hip hop freestylers. We just roll with it, and it just comes.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I saw the 2 of you. Funnily enough, yeah.
Thanks very much. I find myself on that. Yeah, no, it is amazing. It's a question I get asked a lot. Preparation, how much do you have to do? And I said, I don't. I click up, I play a start, and we talk for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Sometimes we go down the rabbit hole.
And do you guys live close together?
So I'm in the southwest, Jum's up in Dundee, but so we've always done it over Zoom. And actually, the first time we ever met Sandy in person was 2 weekends ago. We got invited over to the Isle of Islay.
Isla.
Oh my God, yeah. So we went over there, and first time we met Sandy in person, and we just had the best weekend ever. And actually, I've just listened, our first podcast from like our first live one ever together just came out today, and I was listening to the first 20 minutes on the way home, and what a difference it makes when we're all in together. Like, it is such a difference. And I think it's the best podcast we've probably ever done.
Oh, it makes a massive difference. I mean, we launched ours just like 2 months before lockdown, and the full intention, we called OnFARM. The full intention that was we were going to be on farm, and then we spent 2 years basically being in a room surrounded by cushions talking on Zoom, because we didn't predict that. But you're right, when you get the chance to actually go out on farm or wherever, and you're face to face with the people you're chatting to, it makes such a big difference. But you lot seem to manage okay over Zoom, and you've still got that banter, and it does mean that the whole process doesn't take quite as long. If you can record it remotely, technology is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The good thing is, because me and James and Sandy all do very different things, like the weather and everything farmers come up against, it's constantly a topic. It's either in the news or it's in some sort of farming, press. So yeah, we do talk about up-to-date stuff, but a lot of the time we just talk about what we're doing that week. As you know, farmers, like, the good thing about being a farmer is every day is different, apart from when James sitting on a potato harvester for 6 months. But but do you know what I mean? At the same time, it is great because we always have something to talk about. And what ends up happening is I'll start talking about easy care sheep, and then, as James says, we'll end up down a rabbit hole talking about agriculture in Ukraine, or do you know what I mean? So it does, yeah. I mean, it just kind of happens. I don't know how it happens. We just kind of start talking, and we could go on for hours.
And I suppose if before there was 3 of you, you had more guests, and so you kind of knew that the topic was going to revolve around that guest. But now that a guest has become a presenter, I guess it's more kind of just chit chat, is it? And just shoot the breeze and see what everybody's been up to that week.
Yeah, it's not a Spanish Inquisition to your guest life. you know. So
Yeah.
so we
Sometimes I think I'm a bit like that, actually. Only because I'm nosy. I'm so nosy.
So you kind of felt that after a while, we weren't losing our identity, but it was becoming a bit more of a serious. Yes, there would be the odd joke coming in now and again and trying to keep it light-hearted. But with Sandy, and we've got like a stronger rapport every week now, and going to Isla, and honestly, I mean, we can't even tell you 95% of the stuff that like was talked about. But we literally...
Did you drink too much whiskey?
Oh, well, yeah, unfortunately.
Tell her about the tour, like what time the tours started and stuff. It was ridiculous.
The tours were 2:00 in the afternoon, and the first tour we went to was whiskey warehouse tasting.
Oh, nice. But yeah, just after lunch.
Yeah, 65% strength, about 80 ml pours in 3 glasses. Well, I mean, amazing the difference half an hour can make between you walking in the door and walking out the door, I can tell you. But yeah, we had this like such a laugh a minute. Honestly, I didn't stop the whole weekend. To be honest with you, if I'm being truthful honest, we just took Michael out of each other the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite amusing to have a podcast where, we speak about some serious topics, because there are certain subjects that my blood pressure goes from here to here, and my high horse behind me, I climb right on top of it. We probably sound like a dysfunctional, disorganized, team, but it's amazing how it just, we think it clicks. I don't know, it might not.
I listened to one this afternoon, and it was one of your quizzes. So I listened to a bit of banter about WD-40, and it did make me laugh, actually, when one of you, I can't remember which one of you, was hesitated over identifying that yellow stuff in the field as oilseed rape, and I was thinking, oh my god, are these guys farmers or not?
Do you know that way you know the answer, but you can't get your code word out your mouth? I was like, and Nick got Fergie before I got Dia. Made me look like a right idiot.
But you can tell that there's just that great rapport. Like, you've used that word, I think, James, already, but that great rapport between you. And it means, I think, that you can talk about, I haven't listened to all your episodes, I'm afraid, but what I think that the rapport does is it actually helps you to talk about some of the more difficult topics to talk about in an easier way. If you're talking about rural mental health or something like that, that becomes easier if you're not, you're still taking it seriously, but it's so much easier if you've got a really good relationship and you can be open and honest with each other. And I think that's really important, and it's really important that you have established that with each other. But you're such easy guys to talk to that I'm sure you established that with your guests as well, which you need to do in kind of 5 minutes flat.
With the mental health thing, we had a friend of mine, and James knows him as well from university. I can't remember what episode it was. It's quite early on. It's might be the 6th or 7th episode. He's a dairy farmer down here, or was a dairy farmer down here. And, he talked about like his real serious mental health. He talked about taking his own life. And we've both known this person for a long time, and he's a joker and he's good fun and everything like that. And I've never actually had that sort of conversation with him ever.
Yeah.
But when he came onto the podcast, James, you've never seen anything like it, have you? He just opened up, and it was amazing. I mean, it's one of the best podcasts I've ever done because it was open, it was honest, it was real. But it's amazing. Yeah, I mean, somehow we seem to manage to just get information out of people that they wouldn't usually disclose. And I think you're probably right. I think the lightheartedness maybe is a part of that, because it's not too serious, but at the same time we're talking about serious stuff, and people relate to that, I think.
Definitely. But can I just take you back a bit though, Nick, because James said that you phoned him up one day and basically told him that you were going to do a podcast together. Why did you phone him up? Like, where did the idea come from in the first place? What made you think, oh, I need to create a podcast? And I also need to have James on it. Like, tell us the story from the beginning, because we've got our story, but I love to hear the same one from other people.
So before I came back to farming, as James said, I lived in London and worked for a huge kind of sales company. And I had an hour and 15 tube commute every morning and would listen to podcasts all the time. Absolutely love podcasts. Like the Rugby Pod is probably the first podcast that got me into it, and I absolutely love it. And then anyway, I came back to farming and I was out rowing up silage or hay or haylage or something in the summer. And I got bored of listening. By day 2, I was bored of listening to the radio. And I started listening to lots of different podcasts. And the majority of agricultural podcasts are very serious and are talking about, serious issues in farming. And we've got a real issue in this country where young people don't really have a way to get into farming or don't want to get into farming. So I just kind of had this idea of, if we could take the serious issues of farming podcasts, mix it with something along the lines of kind of, the rugby pod where there's a little bit of banter in it as well, make it relatable to young people, whether they're in farming or want to get into farming or whatever it is, and then mix it all together. That'd be great. And then I kind of thought, well, I can't really do this on my own because I'm not that funny. And then I thought, well...
Self-aware.
Honesty is the best policy.
Well, I said it to get a laugh, and I did. So I thought in my head, if I could have a stock farmer, a dairy farmer, and an arable farmer, giving all different kind of sides to farming as a mixture, it'd be perfect. And if I could have someone that I know is good fun and good banter, and the first kind of person I thought of was James. So I spoke to James, and then James had a friend who was a dairy farmer who had to pull out quite early on just because of what was going on in the dairy industry at the time and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, and that's basically how it was born. I forced him into it. And it's amazing that I know you guys have been going for 4 years, but we've been going for 2 years now, and it doesn't feel like that. But it's amazing how it just grows and goes and goes.
What, if anything, has changed? Or maybe the question is, what has been cemented, like, amongst the both of you in terms of, those goals that you had before you started? Are you achieving those goals? Have you got more to achieve? Like, what do you think is or should be like the main purpose of what you're doing here? And if the answer to that is just having a laugh, then fine. But I'm just curious to know what it is that continues to motivate you, because it's not actually that easy. It's quite hard work to put out a regular podcast. So what is it that drives you both to keep doing it?
Well, I'm going to answer this first because I know James has got an answer for this as well, but I'm just going to say my side of it. The one thing about doing it with James that's amazing is he is hugely passionate, and his knowledge of farming is genuinely second to none. He knows what's going on. He knows what the price of this is. He knows this. He knows that. And also, because he's so passionate, and he talked about his blood boiling and things like that, the biggest problem we see is education of the general public in regards to actually where their food comes from, and also getting young people to farm and continue this farming legacy that, we all worked really hard to protect. So for me, that's the biggest thing, is the kind of passion, the education, and continuing, hoping to get young people into it. And, every time we have a guest on, we always ask the guest the question, if you didn't have a parent who was a farmer or whatever it was, how would you get into farming? Because we want to know the answer. We want to know how people can. But I mean, I think the big thing for me that keeps us going is the fact that James always has something to get angry about, which I just love.
To be fair, on my part, it's cheap counselling. So the more I can wean out of these boys for free of telling me it's going to be all right, I
love that. Yeah.
But you've also got to remember there's quite a lot of other people listening. You can get caught up in the moment of thinking you're just speaking to 3 people on a screen.
Yes. I think that's why a lot of people open up a lot, actually, because they kind of forget that. Yeah.
One thing from a personal point of view, I probably was a bit loose with my tongue when I was younger, in terms of I spoke before I thought. I think this has really trained me to understand that once you say something, it's out there.
Yeah, particularly in the modern age.
Correct. I had a guy in New Zealand who was over back in Scotland who I bumped into, who was listening to my podcast, who one of his guys on the farm was speaking to him about it. That's the level of that it can go to. So you've got to be careful. But I really enjoy it. It's more for we often get messages of people finding it very interesting for new, people that aren't maybe necessarily farmers who are interested in agriculture. They don't want to know the photosynthesis uptake of light in the wheat crop,
Yeah.
So I like being able to deliver the sort of the information of the untold true story around agriculture, as opposed to what gets branded in the news articles, outlets these days. For a quick example, I was on Talk TV the other day with Vanessa Phelps, and the headline was, "No potatoes for Christmas," and I'm like, God,
drama.
Where have they got this from? Like,
yes,
I've got sheds full coming out, like, please. But, so it's things like that. And if we can do anything to try and get the message over, But I also really like working with Nick and Sandy as well. And Nick, fair play to him, he's come back from London to home to start up. And, you know, I give him a lot of flack every episode for his easy care sheep. I mean, all the time. And, but he, regardless of what he's done specifically, he's come home, he's made a stamp, he's gone and bought a bit of land himself, he's changed the direction that their farming business was going in terms of, you know, and it really was in a livestock world where it's very like, oh, what are you doing? Oh God, you know, disastrous if you don't have blackface yows on a hill.
Yeah.
Nick's gone, well, okay, I hear you, but let me try my thing, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And when somebody tells you that they're doubling the numbers, well, it's not hard to figure out if it's working or not.
Yeah, totally. Kind of switching slightly, but I'm really curious. You know, I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not good with technology. And so when I first had the idea to create a podcast, I was like, oh, well, great, but I have no idea how I'm going to do it because I don't know anything about this. Luckily, I happen to know Dave, and that's his career. But what do you guys do in terms of the technology? Do you record, edit, do everything yourselves? And who is it within the team that's like kind of got that skill set?
So me and Jim are just the dumb guys that've got all the chat that come on and talk about it. No, to be fair, Sandy's really good at editing for social media and stuff like that. Like that's what he does as a job. Like Farm Stock is his kind of full-time thing. So he does all that sort of stuff for us.
Yeah.
Me and Jim come up with the kind of ideas and content and, you know, the photos and everything like that. And then an old rugby friend of mine from Aberdeen University actually works for a podcasting company down in London.
Handy.
Yeah, so when I came up with this idea, I took it to him. He was the one that said, all you need to do is go and record 4 on Zoom, send them to me, and I'll see if we can make this into something. And since then, you know, through sponsorship and advertising and all that, like, it's grown. His relationship to it's grown as well. So yeah, me and James provide the chat, Sandy provides the editing of the social media, and Mark, our poor producer, does everything else.
And that's a perfect segue, actually, into my next question. We spend quite a lot of time, although never enough, on promoting the podcast. You want more people to listen, and you also want more people to sponsor. So what do you guys do, kind of either individually or collectively, to shout about it and say, look, we're here, please listen, please sponsor, please whatever, but ultimately please get involved?
One of the biggest things for us is word of mouth. Like, because it's got that kind of funny part to it, people listen to it, enjoy it, and then they tell their mate about it. And also, we're brutally honest on it as well a lot of the time. So, I've said things on there about nights where I've lost like lambs through storms and stuff like that. And people are talking about that. So word of mouth's great. Social media is just the best avenue in the world. Our Instagram was built from nothing and just kind of went a bit mental. So we do a lot through that. And TikTok, like some of our TikToks have had 400,000 or 500,000 views and things like that. So between social media and word of mouth, that's really all we've done, Jim, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit I'm not very good at it, to be honest. Well, there's not very good and then zero, and I'm kind of about here.
That's why it's good to have a team.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know what I bring, but I must bring something.
Farming knowledge chat, by the sound of it, and chat.
That's it.
And anger. I like Nick said, anger, which I kind of like. You got to be. I'd say passion. Actually, is probably the good one.
Absolutely, passion is what James brings, and that has been genuinely the basis of a lot of our podcasts.
I get excitable like quite easily because the problem is because it affects us daily. So it's like
yes,
and it's financial impacts. It's everything that happens in agriculture is a financial hit. It's never a financial gain. None of the things ever put in place to be a financial gain. There's always, and if there is, there's always a clause. There always is a loophole.
There's a catch,
and it comes with doing a lot of nonsense, basically, to be truthfully honest with
you. You've started him now. He's on.
I know. I'm stopping. I'm bringing myself back.
I don't mind. The next time we have a particularly controversial topic coming up, we'll phone James and get him on. We've done a few panel. We have actually done a few panel ones, and they're always quite entertaining. So if you fancy a discussion with somebody, we'll get you on. But
man, I tell you,
in your heads, you must have a kind of idea of of where you want to get to in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, either in terms of, you've got a certain guest who you think, I'm not going to rest until I've got that guest on the show, or maybe you've got a target in terms of how many people are listening, or what are you hoping for? Because as I said earlier, this is hard work. You put a lot of time into this. What would give you the satisfaction of keeping it going? What are your kind of key hopes for going forward? And that's kind of to both of you in turn, if that's all right.
Well, we've had some amazing guests, like, the likes of Gareth Wyn Jones, Cammy from the Sheep Game. We've had some really cool people, Lizzie and, oh God, I forgot another lady, but we've had from Boots and Heels.
Oh, yes.
So we've had some amazing guests on, but actually the podcast I've enjoyed most was the one that we did live together. And the thing that's really special is when people send you messages. And actually, the message we get most of all is when we haven't had a podcast out for a week or 10 days because something's happened, is when's the next podcast out?
Yeah.
So I love that. Since Sandy's joined, our social media has got so much better as well. So to be honest, I just wanted to see it keep growing. I love bringing on good sponsors. I love working with them on that side of things. But also the biggest thing for me, the problem is I'm a newish dad. Sandy's got 3 kids. Jum's got a mega business. I've got 2 or 3 businesses I'm working for or working. Sandy's got his business. So I'd love to do more live stuff with us all together, but it's trying to work it out. It's hard.
Yeah, the really fun stuff. How about you, James? What would you be happy with if we were having another chat in 2 years' time in terms of what you've achieved?
That Clarkson loves me that much that we do a Jum's Farm Prime special. No, this is how adventurous our minds can be. I think it was like episodes, like podcast 7 or 8. I remember texting Nick being like, "Do you know what will propel us here, Nick? We'll try and get Clarkson on the podcast." And I'm like, looking back at it, we're so far from that.
You never know. We've got a bid in to have Clarkson on the podcast, and his people said we might. Like, his schedule is obviously crazy, but his people didn't say no. It was more like, well, you'll just have to wait a while because of the long list. But I think they said today, like, hopefully in 2024. So it's worth asking. Like, what? Yeah, it's worth asking.
Yeah. So that's, for me, things like that would be really good. There's a lot of influential people or people that are creating influence within the agricultural industry and getting somewhere with it in terms of policy. Unfortunately, we live in a world. It's not unfortunate, but unfortunately, we live in a world where he was a celebrity into his cars. He's got into farming, and then all of a sudden, he can get meetings at 10 Downing Street.
Yes. Yeah.
And I see that as a bit of a, well, that's fine, but do you really know what we need to iron out here? You only learn from being in it for so long, and it becomes more true to you the more kickings you've had over the years. So I'd love to see it going to the point where, because we're a bit of a jokers, we're never going to probably be listened to in terms of that aspect. But to try and get the message out there, it's not like we're starting a cult or anything like that, but it's like trying to get, everybody thinking in the same direction, trying to get the mindset into thinking that the farmer's the important one in the whole line.
Yeah.
Nobody else is important in that line more than us.
Mm-hmm.
But we're always treated as though you're the least important. And that's the way they like to keep it. And if we can ever so slightly change that, I'd be over the moon. So along with our live shows, and we're going to, get better at our doing, when Nick sent me the email of the professionalism of your email. This is the first time these things have been on, I tell you.
That's all Dave's doing, nothing to do with me.
But it's professional. And and that, I think, is the next jump, because unfortunately I sometimes sit in my combine and do them. And
that's okay.
Sometimes.
That's okay.
6 months a year.
And it's hello, and it's
Dave likes that because it's authentic sound. He's got a fancy BBC word for it, which I can't remember, but I think it's good to have a bit of. That's why we've said we prefer being out and about, in real life recordings rather than sitting here. Because it does make for great sound, and the farming sector is an industry that has some great sound effects. So
as long as father and son aren't working together splitting cattle and you're standing in the background, you'll be all right.
Beep.
Yeah. And you see a blue bit of Alcathene pipe winding through the shot.
That's the beauty of audio instead of video. You can't see what's going on. Now, guys, I'm going to let you get back to your families and your evening shortly, but I have to talk to you first because like everybody's doing it, and I'm really fascinated, and we're not. The merch. Tell me about the merch. Because I see the hats and everything. How is that going?
It's a funny one. So we got a designer on board to design us some merch and everything like that. Came out with all these hoodies and t-shirts, and it completely flopped. I'll be really honest, completely flopped. So anyway, it's kind of been sitting there in the back burner for the last kind of 6 months or so. And my wife works in marketing, and she's like, what you need to do is bring out some really nice winter hats just in the run-up to kind of Christmas. And it's been a game changer. The hats have gone mad. The new logo is so much better as well.
Amazing, yeah.
But what we found out, if you actually design quality logo on a quality product rather than a hoodie, people like it a lot more. So yeah, merch is great now. I think we'll take it bit by bit. I think we'll probably do caps in the summer or something like that. But I mean, you see the likes of the Sheep Game and Grassmen.
Oh yeah, crazy. Yeah.
Every second kid's got one of their jumpers on, something like that. So I thought it'd be really easy to do, but it's not. It's really difficult.
And actually, let's finish up with that, because you don't make a podcast for free. You've got your time that you've got to give, which technically, you could argue that's free, but you've got a million other things you could be spending your time doing. I'm imagining that your friend in London, he's probably not doing it all for free. And we don't need to talk about figures because that's none of my business. But I'm often at pains to try and show people the reality of this, because I think a lot of people assume that it's like the BBC and that we can just fly to Orkney and record a podcast about sheep and that we're just going to bear the cost of that. So how do you kind of sort of square that circle or kind of have the conversation with people to say, well, we'd love to all three of us travel to Aberdeenshire to do a podcast about this, but we can't justify the cost. How do you have those conversations with people?
So, I mean, we've made some money through sponsorship that's kept us going for 2 years. Islay Estates fully sponsored us to go over there because they saw the value in the content that we produced for them. To be honest, it's all been self-funded. Like me, James and Sandy have done everything ourselves. The production company we work with that Mark works for, they make money through advertising. So that's how they make their money for working with us. We don't have to pay them. But yeah, I don't know. The time thing's probably the most expensive thing, wouldn't you say, John?
Yeah. Time. I'm often find myself sitting waiting on an irrigator to come in, and I'm sitting with my headphones in my tractor. And we're doing a podcast, or in my potato planter this year we did 3 or 4, and it's time consuming, but it kind of feels as though it's the old stuck record. Welcome to farming. You give most of your time away for free anyway. So an extra hour for a fortnight is not a killer.
Yeah. And it feels good as well. I find like you're telling a story. You're either telling a positive story or you're telling a realistic story, and you've got people out there listening, and that kind of gives you the buzz to keep going in a way.
As James says as well, like genuinely is therapy. Like, see, coming on on a Tuesday night and us just talking, like the majority of stuff we're talking about is real life stuff. So like, I bring up the lambs again. We had a terrible storm here during lambing time, and everything was going amazing. I was telling everyone how great easy cares were, and I lost 19 lambs overnight because of how bad the storm was.
Yeah.
But see, just talking to James and Sandy about that, you feel 10 times better afterwards. So I mean, it is as much as it's great to listen. Well, we hope it's great to listen to. A lot of the time for us, it gets a lot off your chest, and farmers are terrible for keeping stuff to themselves and not discussing it. So yeah, in that way, it's amazing.
Yeah, and actually you can't put a value on that, can you? It's just so important. Well, guys, I don't know if you're going to be at the Highland Show, but if you are, that might be a good place for us to meet up and say hello. And
depends what time.
Well, when do you crack open? Yeah, I was going to say you crack open the whiskey at 2:00, so it'll have to be before then.
See you at 8:15.
Yeah. Actually, probably just if you could just tell our listeners how they can listen to your podcast, that would be really helpful.
So,
and then just anything else you think we've not talked about that we should.
Apps, all that sort of stuff. Just type in Farming Funny, or you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, all of the usual socials. I think the funny thing about it is, I've listened to your podcast and I think it's brilliant. And you've done it for a long time and you're talking about all different issues and it's really good. And I think you're going to come on our podcast as well. And
I'd love to.
I think a lot of people need variety in their life, so they come and listen to you and, they're getting that kind of the outlook on farming and that intelligent look on it. And then if you need a break, come and listen to us talk rubbish for 40 minutes. So I think anyone in agriculture can listen to both sides of the table.
Totally, yeah. And I totally agree with you. Like, no, certainly in the rural sector, maybe it's different in rugby or whatever, I have no idea. But certainly in the rural sector in Scotland, there should never be any two podcasts that are in competition with each other. People can and people do listen to plenty. And it's probably, as you say, it's just what kind of mood are you in on that day, which one you choose, and listen to both. I totally agree with you. You might have to do a more serious episode if I'm coming on as a guest.
Yeah,
I'll work on my jokes.
We're gonna have to try not to swear when you're on as well.
Oh, you're coming into our domain now, Anna.
Yeah, exactly. I won't be offended at all.
Thank you so much for having us on. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been great.
Not at all. Thank you for giving up your evening.
So there we go. What do you think? Do you think we should do on-farm merchandise? If you fancy a pair of on-farm branded boxer shorts or anything else, drop me an email and let me know. Not something we've considered before, but seems like it's going great guns for the Farming Funny guys. So thank you again to them. I look forward to being a guest back on their show, but I better go and polish my jokes before I do that. Thank you again to Bell Ingram for sponsoring this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. This podcast is brought to you by the team at Scene and Heard PR and Marketing, and we have another project up our sleeves at the moment, which, big promise. I can pretty much guarantee it's going to be interesting for everybody. So there we go. To find out more about it before anybody else does, and to get any early bird offers, just head on over to our website and sign up for our e-newsletter, which goes out once a week, and we'll make sure that you're kept informed. So the website is www.sceneandherdpr.co.uk, and that's spelt scene as in scenery and herd as in a herd of cattle. So head on over and sign up. But that is that for this week. We'll be back next week with some new content, and meantime, have a great week.